Hi, I'm Mike Terhar from Gitlab. We have a group called Segregation of Auto Duties. It has two projects in it, one for deployment and one for the web application. So I think the easiest way to get through this is to just make a change. We'll start with our web app because we have some feature that needs to be built. We'll say it's a change text sort of change. I'm going to keep this simple. If we want to check what production looks like right now, it's this web page that says application updated with new text, because the last time I went through this, I typed that string in. In this case, we're going to create a merge request for our new branch. We're going to say we want to change the text to something new. We'll just do the web IDE. It's easy. Source, main, Java, com, example, demo. So we got our application updated with new text, and then we'll say further changes for demonstration purposes. This is the important part here because we don't want our pipeline to die from our incredibly detailed unit tests. So we got to make our unit tests match. And then we'll say updated the string. It's a bad commit message. So now we get a pipeline. This will be an interesting thing to look at because I used the auto DevOps templates here, which means we have lots of jobs to do. I'm going to go ahead and pause. All right, we gave the pipeline some time to pass. Everything looks fine. Still doing performance test, but don't really care too much about that one because right now we can pull up our environment that shows our review app for change text. And how's it doing? Further changes for demonstration purposes. Looks good. Looks different. Put on our manager hat. Manager says, yeah, that pipeline's fine. Merge once pipeline succeeds. So in the normal workflow, the merge event creates a pipeline which will then have steps to deploy to staging and master or do incremental rollouts, things like that if you're using Auto DevOps. Rather than follow that path, we're going to this specific commit that's part of merge request 2 and will soon be on the master branch. We want this to be released, and we'll call it v3 because that's the version that is next. This creates another pipeline, which we can see here for our v3 tag, right, this guy. And there are some jobs in here after it does a few of the regular ones. It's got to create the container and tag it. The review app part's unnecessary, but I just didn't disable it. But this job, handoff to merge request and handoff commit, are the two that are interesting. So I'm going to pause again, and when they're done, we'll investigate. Okay, so those jobs succeeded. We are unpausing now to investigate. The first thing we'll notice here is that those jobs created a merge request and commit. And so when you get a new merge request, you get a nice notification that comes out of GitLab itself. This isn't a merge request, but this isn't a pipeline action. This is just a result of that pipeline action doing the normal notification mechanism. And so we have one for the merge request, talks about the branch, talks about the author, always going to be the robot in this case, and then the commit information. So from here, we want to go and check out this thing. And I'm using a copy-paste link because I don't want to use Chrome to look at stuff in GitLab. So now we're in GitLab. We're looking at the merge request that was just created from the Spring web app. We are in the deployment application, not the Spring application. It references the deployment application, or it references the Spring app in the only change that was made. The commit was a single line change to reference the version 3 tag instead of the version 2 tag. Since we know that this is good, we will go ahead and run the staging approval just to give you an overview of what the pipeline looks like. It is an artifact retrieval, a validation, and then this gate to do that approval. When the approval job ends, it'll continue with the pipeline, which is the staging job, which I'm on top of, so oh, wrong way. I'll lean over this way so you can see the pipeline. Staging job here, then the stop job. It's just like the review app stop job. So I changed these jobs around a bit to act more like the review app versus the regular staging, which is just a single static environment on the way to production. Either workflow is fine. This is just different ways of leveraging auto DevOps. So now we have a nice environment path here. Further changes. The staging app is working. Looks good. Thanks, staging app. So now we can go back and check our pipeline. You'll notice that there was not a job in here for production deployment because we're on a branch and we don't want branches going to production. We only want branches going to the staging job. And then when we merge the branch into the master branch and get that production option, it'll clean up itself and remove the staging application. And just to remind you, this is what the production app looks like right now. I can refresh it. We're still doing that. And then this is what our staging app looks like right now. These are both running in different environments here. Since we merged our review app into the master branch, that review app was shut down on the other side. So then when we get to the next part here is the merge event to get to that production pipeline. So we say everything's good here. We hit the merge button to get this merged in. Then we get a new pipeline down here that shows artifact job, production job, and the manual deployment job. Much simpler pipeline than the stage branch. No validation here. You can, of course, add and embellish anything you want on this pipeline. But we have the very simplest form of this. The production approval job I already ran when it was paused. Oops. So it turned green. It did not then run the production job. It just enabled the person who's allowed to run it to run it. Changing a production environment in a lot of cases needs to be something that's done during a window, during a rollback period, during a low traffic period, during a time when the ops team is there. So the person who approves it may be, an oversight sort of role or a CM sort of role. The person who actually is the deployer and the monitor person and the rollback person may be a separate person and may have a separate timetable. So you can have these both be manual actions so that they can happen at different times. But once we hit that play button, in this case, it's going to go through the deployment process. It'll do the same, this is the same exact deployment mechanism that we've done for all of the other deployments, from the review app in the application job to the staging app. This one, it's just different targets that are given different credentials from the Kubernetes integration. We just got the end of this job, so our production one, application updated with new text, now says further changes for demonstration purposes. So I guess let's take a few seconds to go back through, oops, wrong one, the handoff job, because I think that's the important one. There's, 180 lines in this file here. Most of it's just tweaks and adjustments and like squashing jobs that we don't want to run. But handoff merge request, this one uses a Go application called Lab Assistant, which just fires off a couple of API calls. It's not all that complicated or fancy, but it's a simpler looking job than if you tried to roll all those things together. It can be a little smarter about identifying users and identifying target projects. But all this does is it waits for a tag. If the tag says version v as the first character, it'll run on this. It needs the test to have completed. That way we don't have to wait for the review app to spin up. And then the handoff commit, I didn't have time to implement this in the Lab Assistant application yet, so I just made curl requests. This one tries to update the file if it exists. This one tries to create the file if it doesn't exist. Either way, at the end of these two curl commands, one of them will fail in either event, but at the end of both of them being attempted, the file will have been updated with the new contents, which is the registry path and tag. It'll be put on the new branch, which is named the same way that the internal mechanism in here names branches. Returns the JSON file back for troubleshooting purposes. And then it only needs the handoff MR thing to have completed because of creating the branch as part of this merge request creation. So that does the heavy lifting there. And then on the other side, this is a 13 point something feature that just showed up recently that allows you to take a file like our artifacts.txt file. This just splits it at the colon. So it looks for the colon in the middle of that long repository on one side and then tag on the other side string. It splits it because the auto DevOps job expects them to be separated and then puts them back together. So I'm using this CI application repository and CI application tag as the environment variables that are delivered to the deployment jobs. And again, this is the review app deployment job, the staging deployment job, the production deployment job, always gets those two variables to override what auto DevOps would try to deploy regularly. And then it stores it in this env file, which we send off to our .env report. And the magic here is that when all the future jobs in the pipeline run, they are given the contents of that file as environment variables. So in this validate job, it says, I found this thing, and this is what I'm going to try to run in the Kubernetes cluster. And so that's a good way to validate that it worked. If you have any questions or comments or anything, come on over to my segregation of duties group. And I think I'm going to use the deployment project since it doesn't have a lot of other stuff going on. But feel free to create issues in here and complain about things that don't make sense or suggest better ways of doing it. Thanks for watching.